Chapter 7 Duality. The same energy that melts butter forges steel. The Cosmic Game.
There is a saying in Hinduism that samsara is seen as ignorance of the true self. Samsara is the universal tendency for the soul to identify with the reality of the world of illusions, or the temporal, phenomenal world called Maya. In order to achieve moksha, or liberation, we need to understand how our behaviors create energetic imprintings in this world. Attitudes such as attachment, greed, desire has energy associated with them. Life is a laboratory. Imagine that when we get the keys to the lab, we find that those who used it before did not clean up the messes. We inherit what has been left behind. Every time we move around the lab, we have to confront this. What are the properties of Maya, and how can we begin to see beyond its veil? One of the most important aspects of Maya is the core phenomenon of duality. Duality exists. Anyone living in Maya as a human being must experience it. The entire manifest world that we believe is truth is defined by opposites: male-female, night-day, and good-bad. Even divine beings are represented as gods or goddesses. The ultimate duality is, of course, life and death. Even though we rarely appreciate it, the moment we are born, we will experience the death aspect of this duality. The form of duality that seems to preoccupy most of us is the duality of happiness and sadness, or joy and sorrow. Unfortunately, we teach people to focus only on thinking positively. And when something negative happens, they are devastated. This is because they feel they have been doing the right thing, and this experience of suffering somehow means that they have failed. In later chapters, I will show how our interpretation of suffering prevents us from understanding the powerful spiritual insights which are hidden in plain sight from the gift of the experience. It is our interpretation of suffering that causes the anguish we feel. In Buddhism, we talk about equanimity. Equanimity is the middle path. The practice and development of equanimity allows us to assimilate both the negative and positive poles of life and be able to handle them. The first step is the acceptance of duality. It must and will occur. Our present happiness may be the source of tomorrow's sorrow. The people we have and love in our life today will all pass away, but we teach people not to accept this. We cannot change the existence of duality in this world of Maya, but we can change how we respond to it by cultivating equanimity. The second role of Maya is to keep us in our false self. The false self keeps us trapped in Maya through ego attachment and karma. We begin to believe this is our total reality. The true self is the liberated soul that does not identify exclusively with the reality of this world of illusions. Maya provides the environment for the seduction. We are playing a cosmic game. Maya sets up the rules and facilitates our agendas or issues. It creates obstructions or opportunities. It works at encouraging us to stay in our false self. The false self can experience fear, anxiety, and a sense of failure, illness, energy loss, anger, and guilt. The false self can encourage us to become arrogant, power-hungry, and truly hurt those we come into contact with. We become abusers and create victims. This is as a result of attachments to the ego consciousness. Remember that the ego consciousness is that which keeps us feeling separate from everything else, like the separate drop of milk. When we yearn for the latest sports car and we experience an emotional attachment to this desire, it causes ego attachment. Again, emotional attachment is the key word. We see a luxury car and admire its beauty. If we can do so in an objective way without a burning need to possess, we are not energizing Maya. There is a person I know who enjoys owning luxury cars. He can afford them. I have noticed that when he's shopping for a car, it is almost as if he is observing a work of art in a museum without feeling that he wants to own the art. He judges it for its beauty and creativity. When he makes his decision, there is a sense of peace and acceptance accompanying the process. He seems to be in equanimity. Some people in positions of authority can exemplify this so clearly. I come across examples of this so often. I am amazed how self-righteous these people can be. They say that they are making the decisions in everyone's best interest. They claim that they are protecting others. There is a saying, we do not see things as they are. We see them as we are. Anais Nin. If we see deception, then we are the ones who deceive. When these people are in their false self, they become more ego-attached and they create significant karmic energy for themselves and everyone else. I will be discussing how this rigid attitude is a lost opportunity for self-realization and wisdom. Sometimes it is an opportunity for them to attend to agendas. They miss that opportunity. By reason of duality, the opposite can also occur when we experience our divine self or true self. We can experience compassion, energy, faith, love, success, empowerment, and soul connection. We begin to identify more and more with our true self. We begin to recognize that we are all divine. You may ask, why does this not cause ego attachment? Actually, when you begin to awaken the true self, you also experience Maya, but you are not emotionally attached to it. You experience it as part of the bucket of milk and that it is simply an illusion. It is similar to when you are caught up watching a movie. As you remind yourself that it is an illusion on a screen, there comes a certain detachment from it. The mud starts washing off the statue and the gold starts shining through. Monitor yourself, and if you treat others with compassion and kindness, then that is who you are. Your assessment of yourself must be based on the results of your actions. How did you end up in the job you have? My job is to support people. There were times in my career when I held disciplinary positions. These positions never lasted or created a future for me. If you are open to forgive and show compassion, then you are on the right journey. Remember that we can either poison or heal the drops of milk. There is a reason why we choose certain experiences or positions in life. It can tell us what our agendas are. Therefore, we choose to be born and we come into this world with our agendas which will trigger us. An agenda such as self-worth will keep us connected with Maya. We will radiate a type of energetic message into Maya so that when we meet other people, They will either assist us with our self-worth or challenge it by their behaviors. Do we not see repeated patterns of behavior in others? But do we see it in ourselves? Why is a woman who leaves an abusive relationship often attracted to someone who is also abusive? Sometimes we come from an abusive relationship and we then become the abuser. If you were to point out this fact to people, they often become offended. They may avoid or retaliate against you in the future. These situations are reflecting back to us what our agenda and issues are. Our mind is clouded by ego attachment. Emotions are triggered. We ignore them. We begin to personalize and misinterpret the interaction. Instead of recognizing the situation with equanimity and accept the change we see must have something to do with our own ego, we project the energy onto others. Stop and ask yourself the three reflections. Recognize that when we react and blame others in politics, social situations, or our own dilemmas, it is simply Maya reflecting back to us the issues we need to address. If we fail to understand this unconscious loop, our agendas become the triggers that will keep the game going. It will reinforce our karmic energy and we become stuck more powerfully. Then Maya amplifies our experience. The battered woman may meet someone whom she will swear is different, but his abuse may be subtle and more powerful. Clarifying and transforming our ego attachments and the associated karma will serve to liberate us from the world of illusions. We also choose parents who serve to train and facilitate our agendas. In our early stages of life, our parents reinforce them. At the times we are most vulnerable, our parents imprint our agendas. These agendas will fit within the karmic pattern from which we need to liberate ourselves. Our parents will bring to the forefront that which we need to deal with in order to liberate ourselves. Be aware that as a parent, when we change ourselves, we liberate our children from the issues. If we clean the pollution upstream, gradually all the tributaries of that stream will become cleaner. It is important to note that the reverse is not possible. Our children cannot change the nature of the lessons we need to address. It can be explained this way. Imagine that the parent is like the engine of a train. The children are the carriages which choose to hook onto the engine. This engine leads them towards an agenda they need to experience. If the engine chooses a route that is not uphill but downhill with better scenery, the carriages will also follow in that direction. It is important to recognize that when we use our power to destroy others, we are not only creating karma for ourselves, but we are also gifting our children with that same energy. There is a truth about the sins of the father passing on to the children. We come in for a brief stint in Maya, and we create the situations we want to face. We can only win this game by becoming realized within the world of illusion. I tend to have recurring nightmares about writing my final exams and not being prepared for them. During the dream, I experience shame, anxiety, fear, sadness, and helplessness. It is interesting to note that I have completed multiple qualifying exams in my profession in different countries. I keep having these recurring dreams. When I wake up, I continue to feel these emotions for a period of time. I can speak about it to my spouse or to others, or even run it through my mind. I cannot cure that problem while I am in the everyday waking reality. Until I get into the same consciousness or state that is associated with the dream and nightmare, I cannot change it. Unless I get into deep hypnosis or deep meditation or become more lucid and conscious in my dream state, this recurring nightmare will happen repeatedly. Holding on to my emotions and not creating logical explanations can release them. The everyday gross waking state does not allow me to access the energies I need to change. The deeper issues and underlying agendas are the cause of this fear-based nightmare. Because I am trapped in the world of illusions, I may accept that bad dreams happen when I am asleep, and I will be fine when I wake up in the morning. This is an actual state and set of experiences I can learn to understand further and control. Instead, I believe I may possibly end up with that nightmare, and there is nothing I can do about it. When we learn to access deeper states of consciousness, we can also begin to access the agendas and personal issues of this lifetime. We bring awareness to them. As I work on myself, the frequency of this dream is much less. Even the emotions are now very mild, and I expect them to disappear in time. I am moving up the coil of shorter duration and lesser intensity. I have noticed that my sons talk more openly about their own anxieties now. I plan to work diligently on mine so that theirs can improve. When I was working on my nightmares, I had an experience that introduced me to the phenomenal power of the dream state. A mentor of mine, Dr. Seb Littman, was taking over as the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Calgary. He offered me an academic position and asked me to consider moving to Calgary. There was the issue of funding for my position. He discussed different scenarios for this. They were confusing, and I was somewhat anxious, as it would be a major move for my family. That night, I had my usual nightmare of not being able to pass my medical finals. I stayed with my emotions and tried not to analyze my thoughts. I fell asleep again. I suddenly was in a very different type of dream state. I was experiencing my dream as I usually did, but there was also an aspect of me that was observing and controlling the process. I was dreaming each scenario suggested by Seb. As this happened, I was then able to modify different aspects of the scenarios and combine them into different possibilities. At some time in the process, I dreamt out the perfect situation for me. I knew it was so, not for any logical reason, but there was a sense of deep peace in the dream. I phoned Seb the next day and ran the ultimate scenario by him. He told me that it would be difficult to put in place, but he would try and get back to me. 2 weeks later, I had another dream of the same quality. I was observing how my proposed scenario had shifted. There was now some mild discomfort around my former proposal. On the whole, it still felt right, but not to the degree that it previously felt. The dream state started playing out some modified scenarios. One developed that created that former sense of peace. The next day, Seb phoned and revealed that with a lot of hard work, he was able to create the funding scenario that I had proposed. I remember his silent pause when he heard me ask him to adjust the scenario to what had evolved in my dream the night before. He told me that he felt that I was pushing it on the verge of being unreasonable. He promised to try my suggestion. A few days later, he phoned to say that he was able to achieve precisely what I had wished. He also said that there had been a change in the budget of one of the funders that would have made the previous plan more difficult. I have to admit that I have never had that experience again. However, I was able to recognize that the dream state can be a powerful tool to create opportunities. I also learned that this feeling must be similar to how enlightened people can exist in Maya. I was able to experience each situation emotionally, but there was that objective part of me that recognized that I was in a dream state. I could experience sad and peaceful feelings, but also play them out into different scenarios, creating wisdom. When we are born, we have this wonderful, pure, and exquisite emotional intelligence. We do not experience any logic. We simply know. Friends of mine who have undergone hypnosis and regressed back to the experience of being born describe the moment like a flash of recognition in a crowd of faces. They saw their parents and those significant others who they were going to be connected with in this life. It was as if some faces were in the background and the important ones we were connected to stood out in the foreground. They just knew without any doubt. After that, behavioral patterns, prejudices, strengths, and knowledge from our parents and society becomes imprinted and layered on the child's emotional state. We become confused when we are disciplined as a child. We do not understand the reasoning behind the experience. Gradually, we begin to accept our parents' and society's logic and reasoning as truth. Whenever we feel some aspects of emotional duality, we learn to address it with logic influenced by them in order to understand it. When we go through a critical phase in life where our emotions are truly challenged, we may deny our emotional intelligence. We build a cloak of logic over our emotional experience. Instead of honoring these feelings and going deeper into them for awareness, we begin to program our new creative computer hard drive with rationalizations and judgments influenced by childhood experiences. Eventually, we forget about the power of our emotional intelligence. We lose the ability to know what we truly feel. By the time we get to be aware and independent, Maya has already heavily indoctrinated us and convinced us about its authenticity. We are trapped and caught in ego consciousness. Is this a hopeless situation? No, it requires discipline and awareness in order to proceed. When we become aware of how the game is being played and how we are seduced into fooling ourselves, we begin to initiate change. The first step is to become aware. The universe works in simple ways, and we have the power to create or destroy the world of illusion or remove ourselves from it.
Thoughts may distract me, fear may trap me, hate may cripple me, but my soul is always free. The Cosmic Game.